Hi everyone, welcome to the Makings and Musings podcast. We have another really exciting guest again today. And Hannah is an interior designer, and she wasn't always an interior designer. She rolled in a little bit later in your career. And yeah, I think there's so much interesting stuff that we can talk about. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation and about how you view creativity and how you started your career and how things are going for you now and your plans for the future, all these things. So welcome, Hannah.
Well, thank you, Iraine, for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here and to share my story. But yeah, I'm Hannah, Hannah Ashe, and I am 39, about to turn 40 this year. So I feel like I'm kind of at that point in my life where like I'd been ready for a change. Well, a couple of years ago, and yeah, these days I would consider myself to be an interior designer. But as you say, it hasn't actually always been my career. And so perhaps I talk a little bit about how I got into that as a career. So I actually studied music at university, and I was going to say was, but I still am a saxophonist. I play the saxophone, I play piano, and I studied composition actually at master's level. So music was kind of always my thing when I was younger. As a teenager, I played in lots of bands and ensembles, loved jazz music. And so I went to university, studied music, and then, like lots of people that have a music degree, you kind of go, oh, what am I going to do? Am I going to be a professional musician? That seems quite hard. I'll train as a teacher. That seems like a kind of logical step of something to do that might earn me a living. So I did. I trained as a teacher. And I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it for a long time. And, I was able to be a musician in some respects, but also share my knowledge and love of music with young people. So I was teaching secondary school age pupils, and I worked in several different schools in London. Always lived and worked in London, and I did that for 16 years, and then in about, well, I would say it was probably the pandemic. And I think I've listened to some of your previous conversations with people, and I feel like 2020 is just such a pivotal year for so many people. But that was probably when the seeds of change started to be sown for me, seeing different ways of working, different ways of living. But it took me a few years to kind of get to the point where I was ready, and had made some kind of decision about what I was going to do. So in 2023, so almost exactly 2 years ago, I just had enough of my teaching job because I'd kind of climbed the ladder a little bit in schools. I was head of a really big department, managed lots of people. It was great in lots of ways, but it was also quite a stressful job. And I just kind of had enough. And I think looking back, I was probably a little bit burnt out, but I didn't really know that at the time. And anyway, got to this point, sort of January 2023, and I just thought enough is enough. I need to do something different. And so I decided that I was going to sign up for an interior design course. And that was something that had been kind of an interest of mine, I guess a hobby for several years before then. My husband and I had renovated a few different properties that we'd lived in. I think we're on the third now, but we've lived in this house for quite a while, so a bit more settled here. But this was the third property that we'd renovated. So I really enjoyed that process of changing something, putting out my own stamp on it, choosing colours, just kind of shaping a home into something that worked for me and my husband, and I really enjoyed that. So it'd always been a kind of hobby, and therefore I thought, right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to sign up for this course. So it was a part-time course. It was online. I could do it kind of at my own pace, but I finally kind of pressed the button and said yes on that. And that was really like a catalyst, I think, for making me realize that there probably was something else that I could do out there. So I started doing that and I really enjoyed the course and was kind of cracking on with it. And I thought, you know what, I need to be able to focus on this a little bit more. So in March 2023, I just handed my notice in on my teaching job, decided that I was going to look for a part-time teaching job that didn't have come with much responsibility, that was just, music teacher in a school, maybe somewhere a bit more local. And the rest of the time, I was going to focus on completing my course and then starting to hopefully launch an interior design business. And essentially, that's kind of what I did. And at the time, it felt really, really hard. And actually, when I tell the story and look back at it, I kind of go, why didn't I do that earlier? But that's life, I guess. And so yeah, since then, I've been building my business. I do still teach a little bit part time, a couple of days a week, in a local school, and I'm kind of hoping to sort of gradually reduce that. But I really love it, and I love the kind of, I feel like my creativity is sort of back,
Mm.
and I've allowed myself to kind of revisit things that I used to be interested in and I'd sort of forgotten about, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And I mean, you mentioned earlier about, was interior design something that I had been interested in for a long time? And actually, the answer to that question is yes, sort of deep rooted. When I look back, when I was maybe 14, 15, 16 years old, as I say, I was really into music at school, but I also was really into design. And I did a GCSE in like graphic design, which was all about kind of building little models. And it was kind of quite a long time ago now. So it was sort of just before the days of like computer aided design was like just starting to come in. A lot of it was by hand. We were doing lots of drawings. I learned how to do kind of perspective drawings and model making and stuff like that. And I just loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. And I used to draw pictures of my bedroom and like in 2 point perspective and kind of design it with different like wallpapers and colors and things like that. And I got to a point actually when I was about 16 where I had to choose my A levels. And I was really torn between choosing music as my kind of future pathway, I guess, or architecture was kind of the other thing that I had like very much on my radar. But I had to choose between doing music A level or doing art A level. And I think I couldn't give up music, and so in the end, I went down the musical route.
Mm.
So I think it's quite interesting in a way because I feel like there's a little bit of going full circle with that kind of interest, and I guess maybe the opposite would have happened. If I had have trained, gone and done architecture and not done music, and maybe the other version of me might be sitting here at this point having
Mm.
explored music. I don't know. It's we'll never know the answer to
No.
that.
I think it's so interesting, and there's a lot of things that I recognize in your story that really align with my own story, and I think it's really interesting. Like we're the same age. I'm turning 40 this year as
Oh
well.
yeah.
I went through that same sort of career change a little bit before the pandemic, so maybe like 1 or 2 years before you sort of started on that journey. But yeah, there's a lot of things that I think are very similar, and yeah, you very often see where people come back to something that they love doing in their childhood, and then it's sort of you can't suppress it, and then slowly it comes bubbling back. So yeah, I think that's fantastic. So I always ask all my guests this question because my business is called Makings and Musings, and then makings is the doing part, the action taking part in ourselves, and the creating part. So not necessarily creative, but the creating part, the doing part. And then musings is the dreaming, the imagination, the visualize. So what would you say you are more? Are you more a maker or more of a user, or a bit of
I
both?
l- I love this question, and I really thought about this quite a lot earlier. I think I'm a bit of both, if that's allowed.
Mhm. Of course. I think all of us have a bit of both in us.
Yeah.
It's
But I
true.
think if I had to choose which one I'm slightly more erring towards, I think a little bit more towards being a maker, I
Mm.
think. And particularly in the last couple of years, since I have, because I think something I should just add here is that in this whole career change for me, one thing that's been very, very important is not to go from one very busy, quite stressful job into another very busy, stressful job. So it's very important for me that whilst I am building my interior design business and I really enjoy that work, I'm also trying to make my work for me, if that makes sense, and to allow not just the creativity that happens in the job of doing interior design, but also allowing my own personal creativity to have time to flourish. And I think I actively have to make time for that in my life. But since I have made that conscious effort and decision, I feel much happier and much more myself, if that makes sense. And I think, and one of the reasons I say that is because aside from all the design stuff that I've been doing and learning, I've allowed myself to explore lots of other creative pursuits. So one thing I've got into recently, just for myself, not because I ever want it to become, a business or anything like that, is pottery. And I've long been a huge fan of the Great Pottery Throwdown. It's like my favorite program on TV ever. And sort of, again, when I was in my old job, every year this would come on and I'd watch it avidly and I'd be thinking, oh, I really want to do pottery. Like, this looks great. I just want to kind of, get my hands dirty and do something like that. And a couple of times I've looked up local places where I might be able to go and do a course or something. And I never actually pressed the button and did it. I just talked about it and said, oh, I want to do that, and then just never acted on it. And it's only since that I have perhaps given myself more time, but since I quit that job, actually, I've just cracked on and found a course. And last year, it started in September, I did an 8-week course. It was like 2.5 hours on a Wednesday night every week. Lovely, like local little studio, family run, a mother and daughter who are just amazing and do the best work. And unsurprisingly, you will not be surprised to learn this, I just met the most lovely people on this course, lots of like-minded people. And I just so enjoyed it. It was just so kind of lovely to do something, A, for myself, and B, something that had no real aim. Like, it didn't matter what I was making. Didn't matter whether my bowl was wonky or not. I mean, literally, this room that I'm in is there's all sorts of bits of pottery that I've made. I mean, I'm just trying to see if there's anything to hand. There's like this bowl behind. Actually, this is not a bad one, but there's this little pot here which I made, and it's kind of useless. Apart from you could put something in it, but I don't really know what. But I made it, and it's like, actually, it's just such joy and satisfaction in that. I have no desire to sell things, but it's just been lovely. So I think that probably does suggest that I am more erring towards being a maker, perhaps. But equally, since I left my full-time job, I do lots of writing, and I never did. I would never have considered myself to be a writer. Other than like writing school reports or like emails, I don't think that counts really. But and then it was like something just like switched in me. The summer holidays after I'd left my teaching job, because I was aware of Substack, and I kind of followed a few writers on Substack, and I kind of for a few months had this idea of like, oh, maybe I could start a Substack. But I was like, I don't have anything to write about, what. Who would be interested? Why would I write that? And so, but something kind of clicked, or something was in me that was kind of forcing me to do it. I don't know what that was, or some kind of driving force. And it was kind of August 2023, and I just thought, right, I'm just going to do this. So I just sat down one day and I kind of made a name for my Substack and just wrote something. It was kind of anything. And it kind of grew from that. I didn't actually tell anybody that I'd done it to start with because I was kind of embarrassed about, I don't know, there's this kind of feeling, isn't there, sometimes with creative stuff of like putting yourself out there.
It's that feeling of cringe that sort of, it's often when you see other people do things and you sort of want to do it, but then you feel a bit cringe about it. You're a bit like, a bit envious, but also like, oh, and are people going to judge me if I do this? But actually, that means that maybe you should give it a try and go over that feeling.
I think that's exactly it. You've described it perfectly. It is that feeling of cringe. And yeah, but I did it, and I posted something, and there was a lovely little community there of a few people who sort of encouraged me. And I actually didn't even tell anybody in my family or my husband even for a while, like that I'd written this stuff. And but I gradually became a little bit more confident in what I was doing, and then eventually I kind of did tell people, and I've written on there consistently for well, I don't know, 18 months or something now, and I write weekly, and I just do it for myself, really. I think it's become, I guess it's like my own form of therapy or something, just like getting some words down. And a lot of it is just, I've written about my career change quite a bit, but I've also written about other things. I write about my interior design work. I love to, a bit of a francophile. I love to travel in France. Often write about that. So just whatever, really. So I think there is a part of me that loves that kind of thinking and dreaming, and writing, I guess, is a bit of that. But maybe writing also is part of making. I guess, yeah. So I found that quite difficult to choose between those two options.
I think we live in a society where the dreaming part of us is sometimes suppressed a little bit because everything has to be monetized. Everything needs to be productive.
Mm.
There's this constant drive of what is your output? How much money do you make? Oh, if you do pottery, well, are you going to sell it now? Like there's
Yeah.
always that. And I think it's really wholesome and good to sometimes do things that you just do for the enjoyment of it,
Yeah.
not for anything else. And like the fact that you share your Substack, that's wonderful. But you don't have to share your writing. It's wonderful to do things just for you. But that always feels a bit indulgent, and I think people struggle with that.
I,
Yes, I think it's wonderful that you started to do that.
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I maybe at the risk of sounding like I'm the sort of person that just keeps trying all sorts of different things, which I think I am actually.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. Like everyone should try lots of different things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I explored quite a bit last year was I made some jewelry out of like polymer clay.
Hmm.
And again, that was just a little bit of a desire of something that I think I used to play around with that stuff when I was a kid. And I don't really know what it was that sparked it. I think maybe I love earrings, and I think my sister had bought me a pair of earrings for my birthday or something, and they were made from like this polymer clay stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe I could make my own, Suddenly got this idea of like perhaps I can do that. So I looked into it, I watched some YouTube videos, read some articles and things, and ordered some stuff online. And then and actually as part of my Substack, I run this on a monthly, well, it's almost monthly, kind of online creative group. It's called Create Ensemble. And there's a group of people, and we just come together on a Zoom call, and for an hour just do something creative. It might be writing, it might be making earrings, it might be sewing, literally anything creative. And we just chat for like 5 minutes at the start, and then we mute our sound, but we leave our cameras on, and we're just kind of like working away with other people in the background, and then we just check in at the end. And it was actually during one of those sessions that I started making the earrings. And I got really into it. And I think I do have that kind of personality where I'm a little bit like, oh, this is my thing now. And then I just like, I'm a bit kind of obsessive about it for a bit. And then maybe that enthusiasm wanes for some things anyway. But with the earring, what ended up happening with that is I got really into it, made lots of them, clearly too many for me to wear. And so people around me were all going exactly what you've just said. They were saying, "Oh, you should sell them. You should start an
Mm.
Etsy. You should, you could go and do markets. You could do." And I kind of got swept along in all of this, and ended up doing that. Well, the Etsy thing I did. I set up an Etsy. Oh my goodness, that was like a whole new world of things to learn, which I didn't really need another thing to learn at that point.
Mm.
and I sold a few pairs on there and stuff, but the amount of time that I ended up having to spend photographing them in like the best light possible and taking video, and actually I kind of lost the joy of it because I was just, and I was never going to make any money from them really because I was selling them for like about £7 a pair or something. It was the amount of time that I was putting into it. It was just, it was never going to be a money making exercise. And actually, I realized after a few months of that, I didn't really want to make money from it. It,
Mm.
I just wanted to play. So that's all. I don't sell them really anymore. I just, if I feel like making some, I make some. If I don't, I don't, and that's good, I think.
Yeah, I hear you. I've got lots of creative projects on. I've done some pottery. I've been really into macrame for a while. I did
Ah,
lots of knitting and sewing and like different things. This is my studio full of lots of unfinished projects.
yeah, yeah. But I
But I
think
think it's great to do these things and to dabble into things and to try them out and see what fits. And you don't, and also when you want to start making a business out of something, suddenly, I don't know if when you started to do interior design, if you realized how many other things sort of come with building a business, all your marketing, your website, your everything, your taxes, all everything that comes with it. Was that something that you realized when you started to work for yourself?
probably not. No, I mean, I think I had a little bit of, I kind of knew I probably needed a website, and I knew that I'd have to think about, like tax and kind of like,
Mm,
I don't know, there'd be things to learn, but I had no idea the
mm,
extent of so much of that stuff. And particularly I think the marketing side of the business is the thing that I do find, I don't know about you, but I have to spend quite a lot of time working on that. And sometimes I enjoy it and sometimes less so, but I think it's just part of what comes with it. So yes, it's
mm.
been a very, very steep learning curve that is still going like
Still
this.
learning. Yeah. I don't think that ever stops.
No.
Yeah, and I used to spend much more time on my marketing, and I've got it. I've got quite a nice flow now, where where I know sort of what to post about what, and like, yeah, and so
Yeah.
it's getting easier, but it's definitely, and you figure things out sort of on the go because no one teaches you. You just have to try things out,
Well,
and
this is it. And I think this is part of what I'm realizing recently that, and this is essentially how everybody operates, is we're all just making it up as we go along, aren't we?
mm,
With making the best decisions and choices that we can at any time. But actually, that's okay. And I
mm,
think once you have that realization that that is okay to just
mm,
try things, to experiment, to see what feels right, see what doesn't feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, then don't do more of it.
mm,
And to reflect on what's working and what's not working.
mm,
And actually that's a practice that I think that as a my career as a teacher, because
mm,
teaching is a very reflective practice. And I don't think I realized that so much when I was in the midst of teaching so much. But actually, it's a skill that you develop a lot. This idea of, because so much of teaching, you teach a class and you're not necessarily writing these things down, but you're thinking to yourself
mm,
afterwards, that didn't work with that group, but it worked with when I taught it to this other class. And your brain is kind of constantly thinking, well, how can I rephrase that? How can I reshape that? Maybe I can do that a little bit differently next time. And actually, though, I find that skill it has proved to be really quite valuable in running a business so far, and my work, yeah, as an interior designer as well, and how I, approach things with clients.
mm,
But yeah.
mm. How would you describe your sort of interior design style, or I don't know, like what sort of properties do you love working with? Like how, yeah, and what's
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the two things there. My favorite kind of properties to work on are period properties. So I live in an Edwardian house, which was built in 1909, and it's not like a really, really grand house, but it has got some nice features like some kind of like picture rails in rooms, like quite high ceilings, nice door frames. I've got some interesting shaped windows and things like that. So one of the things that really attracted me, I guess, to interior design was through renovating my own house and really sensitively thinking about how you can restore a house. Because when we moved into this house, it was, I don't think it had been kind of touched for 30 or 40 years. It was a real project. But I really relish that opportunity to kind of sensitively keep character and detail while still modernizing it into a way that makes it suitable for practical living in, this day and age. Because I don't think a house should be a museum. I think it needs to work, and it needs to work for the people that use it and live in it. But also, I think it's a shame when all the beautiful features are just ripped out of a place. So it's trying to kind of, find the balance between those two things. I think that's really important. So I love working on Edwardian houses and also Victorian houses as well. And I live in Southwest London, and there's a lot of those kind of properties around here. So I quite a few of the clients that I work with, kind of, I think that side of my work is what appeals to them. If they have a house that kind of fits that style, that's the sort of thing that I like to work on. Having said that, I also have worked on lots of, more modern properties, and that's always interesting as well. Like sometimes it's trying to find ways to create focal points and interest in really modern houses that new build houses that are really blank canvases and don't have so much
Don't have that
detail.
character yet. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you're almost like trying to find ways to put that in. So yeah, so that's probably the kind of house that I ideally like to work on. But in terms of my style, I think I am really influenced by like natural nature and natural surroundings. I love being outside. I've got a small garden, but I love spending time in my garden. I love house plants. I mean, I've probably lost count of how many house plants there are in my house. And I just love like the forms that nature kind of provides for things, whether it's, literally in the sense of prints that are leaf shaped or things like that, or whether it's more abstract in terms of kind of repetition of pattern that you find in nature. I love to try to use where possible natural materials in designs because, I can, I don't know, maybe this is quite a weird thing to say, but I can sort of feel the difference between actual wood, a piece of furniture that's made from, maybe an antique piece of furniture that's made from a solid, nice piece of wood that's almost had a life of its own versus a piece of some kind of something that's made to look like wood that isn't wood, for example. So I think that to create that kind of calm, warm environment, actually natural materials really strengthen that. And that's something that, where possible, because obviously it isn't always possible, but if I can, I will always try and sort of specify more natural materials. So like, fabrics, like things like linen, and like I love like adding like baskets and kind of wicker and rattan and those kinds of materials into things where possible. Or terracotta, or the thing, just drawing on kind of the natural things around us. So yeah, I think so. So I guess biophilic design is the kind of the technical term for being influenced by nature. But I don't know. Sometimes that feels like a very very technical way of describing it, which sounds a bit doesn't necessarily help to describe that idea so much. But yeah, I think the natural environment is a big source of inspiration for me.
Also, I think a lot of people who are listening might not know that much about interior design in technical terms. So I'm glad to explain it to me because I don't think I would have realized
Yeah.
what that meant.
Well, exactly. I think it's it sounds quite scientific, doesn't it? Doesn't sound, I don't think it's a word that sounds like what it means, if that makes any sense. But yeah, I think natural environment inspiration is maybe a better way to describe it.
Wonderful. And what's your favorite room in the house?
Oh, in my house.
Yeah, to spend time in or
That's a good question.
favorite room. If someone said to you, "Oh, can you design this room for me?" What would you like to do? I know you've been doing a lot of extensions. I saw some posts about extensions.
Yeah, I often get asked to like help people redesign like the layout of kind of an open plan kitchen
Mm,
diner space is quite a common thing. So I often get asked to sort of work on layouts of those sort of things.
mm,
But I think my favorite sort of rooms to work on, I love working on living rooms, like cozy living rooms where somebody's keen to embrace a kind of bold, dark color, something quite moody. I love using colors like that. So I'm always excited when somebody comes to me who's quite open to color because some people quite, understand, fixed about their ideas of what colors they're willing to use. I try and broaden people's
mm,
minds with what might work. That's part of my job.
mm.
But occasionally I'll get to work with a client who is just already really on board with using color. So I think a cozy living room is probably one of my favorite spaces to work on. And in my own house, actually, my favorite room at the moment is this one, which I'm not sure you get a particularly exciting sense of it from the camera view, but I suppose that the reason I love this room is more about context than the actual look of the space. But when we moved into this house, which was over 7 years ago now, we renovated pretty much all of it, apart from the second floor, which I'm sitting on now. And because it's an Edwardian house, so it was built with a second floor. Probably this is like I don't know if there would have been servants up here, but it feels like it's the kind of the tiny room with I don't
I
know.
think there often was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like a
But
housekeeper room sort of tucked away somewhere. Yeah.
yeah.
This is
So
like
this
I have a lot of people from America listening, and they don't, might not have the vision of what the houses in the
ah
UK are like. But yeah, these are really typical London properties. They're quite tall,
yes.
beautiful brickwork, and yeah, if like they're often divided into apartments nowadays. But if you have the whole
Yeah.
thing, it's usually multiple floors with a lot of stairs in
Yeah.
between. And
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So when we moved in, we basically we couldn't really afford to do this top bit because we needed to focus on the rest of it. Obviously, we spent quite a lot of money on it.
Mm.
And so this floor was kind of a bit neglected and it just became the place where you dump stuff. Oh, what should we do with this box? Put it up there. You just, yeah, exactly. Everyone needs a space like that in their house. But that was this room for a really long time. And then last year, because I was then working from, obviously changed my job and I was working from home. My husband works from home full time, so he has an office downstairs. But I was just taking up a tiny corner of the spare room with this sort of desk and all my interior design samples and books and it was a mess. There was just stuff everywhere. And if anybody came to stay, I had to kind of move some of my stuff out of the way to make space for them. So eventually we decided it was time to sort this space out. So last year we cleared it all out and we had some work done. Basically, I got to design my own studio room. So I have now this little room. It's not huge, but it's like you can see that there's got a sloping roof behind me because it's sort of in the top of the house. But the window to my left has this lovely view. I say lovely view. It's not a rural view. This is South London, but I can see over all the houses, the rooftops. I can see the train going past. I can see the horizon because I'm on the top of a hill where I live. I just have this really quite expansive view, and I find it really inspiring. And I will often, I'm a morning person generally. I love to get up around 6 a.m., sometimes earlier in the summer when it's lighter, but I love to come and sit up here and watch the sunrise and, sit with a cup of tea. And I find that that's when I'm most creative, actually. I do a lot of my writing at that time of the day. I think my most sort of, yeah, creative ideas flow in the morning. And I just love looking out. And let's say it's not picturesque. It's not like, I don't live in a park or anything like that. It is just suburban London, but I think there's always birds, there's lots of trees. I see foxes, I see squirrels,
Yeah.
there's always something. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I love
Um,
London. I've lived in London for over 10 years and I've moved out of London, but yeah, you describing that view Oh, I
Yeah.
just love being in London and then seeing all
Yeah.
the houses and all the little chimneys and yeah, there's always something happening somewhere. It's
Yeah.
just yeah, it's just
It, it's
wonderful.
It is. It's great. I think a window is really. It's so easy actually to overlook the importance of a window. And actually, whenever I'm designing anybody's, whether it's like a study space or I was working on a room last week, which was for a teenage girl, she's sort of 16, doing her A levels, and it was just to like redesign the layout of her bedroom. And I kept saying how important it was for her desk, because she spent a lot of time working at her desk, that her desk was facing the window so she got quite a nice window as well. And again, like they just hadn't really even considered that that was important. I was like, actually, that is so good for your like mindset, and I think it's really good for your mental health just to be able to have that connection to light and to see outside. So it's quite easy to overlook that, I think, in a design.
Yeah, well, we spend so much time indoors, right? And then, especially
Mm.
when you're in school, if you're in a building all day or in an office, and it was actually for me, it was one of the big reasons why I wanted to change my careers and be more self-employed, so you can have more of that daylight time and do
Oh,
your own things during the day. Like,
me
yeah,
too.
and there's a direct link between how much light you get in your mental health, and a lot of people suffer from SAD, and like,
Mm.
yeah, so it's only good to spend as much time in light as possible, right? If you have a window in your
Yeah.
office. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. And I know not everybody can ha necessarily has that, but I think if
Yeah.
even if it's a tiny window,
Mm,
trying to get your workspace as close to that as possible is
mm,
really important, and it's quite transformational actually.
mm.
If you've been used to, staring at a wall or not being anywhere near a window, it can make quite a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. How do you work with your clients? Because I know you do in-person sort of visits and you help people sort of like relatively local to you. I'm assuming most of them are, but you also do some online services, right? So how can you explain to us yeah, if people want to work with you,
Yeah,
they do that?
absolutely. So, yeah, as you say, quite a lot of my clients are I work with in person. So, in that sense, that's people who live in London, or
Great.
I live like on the edge of London near to Surrey.
Mm,
So I work with quite a few clients that are out in Surrey as well. So in those cases, I will. They'll give me the information about what it is, whether it's one room or a number of rooms in their house that they're looking to make changes to. So I collect quite a lot of information in advance via a questionnaire, quite a detailed questionnaire, ask them to send me photographs and floor plans and take videos and send me a link to their Pinterest board, or, so as much information as possible. And then I'll go and visit them and spend time in their house with them, looking at the space and suggesting different ways that they might change it. And obviously, for some people, it's they want help with colours. What colour should I paint my wall? Or sometimes people want help with layout. So we look at different possibilities of, furniture and layout and how that might work. Um, and and then depending on I offer a variety of different services, but the most basic service is for me to just go and spend time with the person, do a consultation, and they can make notes. And sometimes I will draw some, sketches and things, and they can keep those. And then that's enough for them to kind of take those ideas and, run with them and make their own changes. For other people, they want me to write up all that information. So that's another add-on that I have for my service, where you can, yeah, I can write up everything we talked about, send over links to particular items, furniture, paint colors, suppliers that they might want to look at, or places to buy certain things. Sometimes I get people who are interested in a particular period of furniture. It might be like mid-century furniture. So I've got quite a collection now of secondhand furniture dealers who I
mhm,
know where to source things from. So sometimes it's that kind of knowledge of, well, where do I get this particular thing
mm,
from, that's a bit more interesting than,
mm.
going to IKEA or whatever. There's nothing wrong with IKEA either. I should just point out IKEA serves people very well, and I have lots of IKEA furniture in my house. But yeah, sometimes it's about trying to find directions that you can point people in that are a bit different. Um, And equally, I offer a more full service as well. So for people who want that complete sort of take them through the whole process, so that will start with a consultation, but then it will include me doing like actual plans, scale plans, drawings, and then putting together all the color schemes for them, presenting them to them, and really taking them through the whole process from conception to actually getting it done and working with the tradespeople to make that happen. And then, as you say, I also offer online services. So I can do online consultations. I collect the information in the same way via a questionnaire. And then I tend to, with those ones, do almost put together a presentation of ideas before I meet with the client online. So I've got sort of something to present with. So often like, use some slides or something like that. And then they will show me the space on camera and talk me through the issues. And I will kind of suggest things through that. But actually it's surprising how much information you can work with in that way, even though I'm not physically in the room with them. And yeah, lots of people, if they're planning an extension or something like that, just having someone to talk through those ideas with, they find quite helpful. So yeah, increasingly, I've been working with more people remotely. It started off being more local, and I still obviously have quite a lot of clients that are local, but also further afield and people who work with me online. So it's really interesting to have that mix and different ways of working. I find that really quite fascinating. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and then you can do so much online now. It's like we all have access to a good camera with our phone. We all know how to work Zoom now and how to do online things. Yeah, you can share quite a lot. You can make quite close connections with people by talking online, like the way we're
Yeah.
doing now. Like I feel like I
Yeah.
really get to know you,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think in many ways it actually makes it a bit easier to yeah,
Yeah.
to open up that conversation and show things. And also
Definitely.
people can take some up close photos from specific corners, or like
Yeah.
there's a little bit more time to then reflect on it and think of it and make a mood board or whatever you're.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And sometimes actually, I mean, Zoom is great for certain things, and it's particularly good for like presenting ideas. I mean, I had an online meeting earlier today with a client where I was presenting like the kind of initial state. This is quite a big project
Mm,
where I'm doing more of a full scale design for them, but for multiple rooms. So I was presenting lots of ideas. So that was done via Zoom. But actually, sometimes when I do an online consultation, it's better to do it via FaceTime on a phone, because it's much easier for somebody to kind of use their phone and like keep flipping the camera around, to show a
mm,
space. So sort of using the right technology for depending on what specific function you need. But
mm,
yeah, as you say, and everyone's become so like adept at using the technology since, I guess, really since 2020 we were kind of
yeah.
forced to. But actually that has helped with lots of things, and it allows my work certainly to kind of reach further. I guess
Mm,
that's the case for you as well.
mm,
you know
absolutely. Yeah. And I don't think my business would be what it is now today without my online courses and doing things
yeah,
online. But I've sort of since a year or so, I started to do more in-person courses and classes again.
yeah,
And it's actually quite nice to do both. So yeah, I like the mix of the two. I think it
yeah,
actually costs a lot of energy, which is not a bad thing. But you give when you're in a group of people, or when you like, I'm sure it's the same for you when you go to an in-person consultation. You put a lot of your own energy into those conversations and into being lovely and listen to
mm,
people and really take all that information in.
mm,
And then you come home and you're a bit like, oh, I'm tired.
yeah,
And
oh
online
yeah.
it's just a little bit more, it's a bit easier flowing sometimes. So then you can take on a bit more work that way. Or
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. And I think that balance of both is ideal, really.
Mm,
That's sort of my ideal workflow, I suppose, to have a little
mm,
bit of both. And yeah, you're right. Going to a consultation it's quite there's a lot of energy is used for it. And but I think something I've realized is that I really, because I would class myself as, I'm definitely slightly more on the introverted scale. Like I think that's partly why I wanted to move my work into being more working from home,
mm,
at least for some of the time. because I actually like being on my own quite
Mm.
a lot of the time. I'm not completely, and obviously there's times when I want to go and be with people, but when I'm working, I'm quite happy when I'm cocooned in my nice, little space up here, looking out the window and just working away. But having said that, when I go and do a consultation, because it is a very focused exchange of ideas, usually with just one person or a couple, it's not a big group that I'm tend to be going and talking to. It's very specific and it's got a real focus to the discussion and it feels really meaningful and it feels like it creates quite an important connection. And I really
Mm.
enjoy that sort of making a connection with people because I think what I didn't maybe realize when I first started to do interior design is that it's absolutely not just about the colors and the design. It's about people
Mm.
and it's about connection with people and trying to find out what makes a person, what excites that person, what do they love? What colors do
Yeah.
they love? What are their hobbies? What do they need
Mm.
space for in their house? What are their families need? Is that going to change over time? And so you're really sort of teasing out details from people and building a relationship where they feel comfortable telling you lots of this stuff
Mm.
because some of it's quite personal, and but actually in order for me to do my job well, I kind of almost need to build their trust in order to have that. And I really enjoy that part of it. I think
Mm.
I never I never really thought about that side of it when I was, I thought about all the technical things, but it didn't necessarily imagine that that would be so fulfilling as a part of the
Mm.
job, but it is, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think I'd really enjoy that too.
Mm.
The um yeah, so it's not about you imposing your taste upon other people. It's more about finding out what they wanted and then maybe challenge them a little bit to try something
Yeah.
new or to experiment a little bit. But yeah, it's very much about them. And a lot of people don't really know what their taste is. Like
No. So it's
it's
helping them to find out what that is. Yeah, exactly. Developing the often it's about
mm,
confidence as well, I find. I've worked with a lot of clients who like the idea of a really bold color, what they see as a really
mm,
bold color in their on their living room wall, but they're almost a little bit scared to do it because I think
mm,
they're almost more worried about what other people might think of
mm,
the color that they've chosen to paint their wall.
mm,
And yet, probably that judgment isn't true of what other people, most people are so wrapped up in what they're doing that they don't think about these things.
mm,
And also, my feeling is very much that you're the one living in your house, you and your family, you're in it every single day. It
mm,
needs to work for that on that daily basis. It needs to bring you the joy that you need it to bring you daily. We're
yeah,
not planning a house for the one occasion a year where, at Christmas where you've got,
mm,
I don't know, six extra
renovation.
family
Yeah.
members coming to stay or whatever. We're not building it, we're not
Mm,
making a house for that. We're making it for the here and now and for the daily. And it seems so obvious when you say it like that, but actually the number of people that are kind of more worried about these external factors
mm,
subconsciously. And I don't think people are actively, aware of that necessarily, but I think subconsciously that is the case. So a lot of it is kind of trying to build confidence in like, no, look, you really like this and this is good. This will look great. Like go for it, do that thing that you want to do. What are you waiting for, So that's a nice thing to
mm,
to help people with, I think.
yeah. I think something that you said earlier I found really interesting about being an introvert because I think, and I think this counts for me as well, but I think not many people would guess you're an introvert because you are a podcast host and you put yourself out there on social media and you talk very confidently into the camera and you've been teaching and making music and doing lots of things where you
Mm.
have to put yourself out there and make yourself a bit vulnerable to do these things.
Mm.
I think people misunderstand being introvert or extrovert as the way you interact with people, whilst in reality, it's where you get your energy from. And I think there's a
Yeah.
big misconception about that. So I thought
Yeah.
just an interesting side note, because I'm an introvert as well, and people never believe me when I tell them. They're like, but you're so chatty, you're so outgoing.
Yeah.
But that's not what an introvert is. It's where you
But
get your energy
I
from.
find that so like I'm
Mm,
most comfortable talking one on one with somebody like this
mm,
or a small, small group, maybe two or three people.
mm,
I am least comfortable going into a situation where it's a large group of people, even if it's a large group of people that I know like quite well. I don't know. I feel like this, I don't enjoy kind of small talk, or I like to get into the nitty gritty of a conversation and talk meaningfully to people. So as I get older, I think I've realized that I don't enjoy those kind of, I mean, I will put myself into them occasionally. I think I'm not, I don't, on the scale of introverts, I'm probably not all the way at the top, but I'm also, and I've done these tests like online and stuff, and like I know I tick all the kind of main boxes, and I find it really fascinating to read about it. But I also know that like if I go and do something that's quite social with a larger group of people, it will sap a lot of my energy. Like I will enjoy it, but I'll get to a point where I'm just like, okay, that's it. I'm my energy reserves are down, and I need to then
Yeah.
go and kind of build them back up again in a quiet space, which is probably just me sitting reading a book, or like, you
Doing a bit
know,
of pottery or doing some sketching,
yeah,
doing something
exactly.
relaxing.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah. So I think it's about that energy exchange and kind of understanding how that works for you. And yeah, I found it quite, I think when I sort of realized a lot of this stuff, it was one of those kind of like aha moments, like, ah, yes, this makes sense. I'm not just really strange for kind of
Yeah.
feeling this way or whatever. And I think actually it's a lot more common than we perhaps hear
Mm.
about. But yes, I think you're right. It's a bit maybe a misconception that
Mm. Okay, you
introverts.
must be shy, but that's not really the same.
No, no,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't describe myself as shy, but
Hmm.
equally in a room with lots of people, I would not be the first person to be putting my hand up. Like I've never enjoyed that. Yeah, so yeah, I definitely feel feel the same as you, I think.
Well, I can be quite like sort of forward when I'm in a room and people ask a question. I'll be quite likely to be the first person, but it's also a bit not necessarily a role that I play, but it's like, oh,
Yeah,
now I am Irene in like this setting, so then you
yeah,
put a bit of extra effort in, and I know sort of this works for me, and so it's um yeah, it's interesting. I
mm,
don't really have the right answer, but it's definitely there's definitely a balance, and I love spending time alone, just working all day, focusing on something, just in my own little space, my own
yeah.
bubble. Yeah, it's wonderful.
I find I crave it. If I haven't had the opportunity to do that for a few days, I just crave it. I'm
Mm.
like so excited to just come home and sit in this little room
Mm.
and do whatever. But
Yeah, same. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, Before we sort of wrapping up our conversation a little bit, is there anything I want to know all about where people can find you and stuff after, but in terms of your work or like, is there anything that I forgot that you'd like to add or any?
Oh,
It's
what
okay if there's not.
did I? Well,
Yeah.
I think so. One of the things that you mentioned in some of the questions that you sent me over earlier, you talked about kind of or what success looks like for me, and I
Yes.
thought that was a really interesting question,
Mm.
and it kind of comes a little bit full
Full circle again.
circle, I think,
Mm.
because I think I want to really sort of make the point that previously in my life, I think I would have linked success to how much money you were making,
Mm.
and now. Like I obviously I have to make enough money to pay my bills, pay my mortgage.
Mm.
But once that is kind of covered, actually what's more important to me in terms of my success is creating time and space for creativity. And I think that's, we mentioned that earlier. So I think I would say that for me now, success is being in control of my time in a way that allows me to do the things that
Yeah.
I want to do. And obviously a portion of that has to be focused on earning some money.
Yeah.
But that is not by any
Not the end
stretch.
goal. No.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that mindset has really
Mm.
changed. And also the ability to have the time and space, but also, I guess, a little bit of cash as well to be able to
Mm.
travel. I think that's something that's becoming, it's
Yeah.
becoming more and more important to me. Those experiences are worth so much more than physical items, I think.
I
Um,
agree.
so yeah.
It's interesting because you work in an industry which is all about physical items, like
Well,
chairs and
yes.
cabinets and cushions, pillows, all these sort of things. But that's not what makes you happy. It's the what you create with it, right?
I think so, yeah. I'm
It's
almost
not
less
about having
interested.
that expensive pillow. It's about
No.
what does the room do for you?
Yeah, and I think actually, for me, what's more important about interior design is about creating a space that works for the person, and actually, obviously, having some nice things within that space, it is going to make it feel better, but it's also about the kind of bones of that space and the kind of way color works in it, and often it isn't about
Mm,
spending as much money as possible. It's about being creative with the
mm,
budget or with what somebody's already got. It might be they've already got some pieces of furniture that they think they don't like, but actually if you look at them in a different way or you position them in
mm,
a different place, that
mm,
you can bring them back to life or you can do
mm,
something with them. So I suppose, yeah, that the really sort of commercial side of interior design
mm,
isn't the part of it that really interests me so much. I'm more interested in working with kind of, not I'm not desperate to
mm,
kind of always work with like super, super rich clients who've just got loads of money to throw at things. It's actually more interesting to work with people who are just,
mm,
have an ordinary budget that and just want to create a nice home and need a bit of help in
mm.
thinking about it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But interior design is for everyone, right? It's not just
Yeah.
for the rich and famous. We all like, even if you don't do anything about your space, then you're still designing it in a way, just not, you've not thought about it. And
Yeah.
sometimes putting a bit of that extra attention in, or it's something, I'm learning this as well. I'm not
Yeah.
naturally good at it, but um, yeah, you make a conscious choice to either live in a like really messy space or in a space that
Yeah.
is a bit more curated, and also to make it work for the lifestyle that you have, as you say, like yeah, and
Yeah.
if you've got
And
lots
also
of
to
hobbies,
make,
have stuff to put it away,
yeah.
to have
But I
peace.
love that. And I
Yeah.
think it's like trying to bring your personality
Mm,
into your house as well. Like,
mm,
I don't personally want to, walk into a house that just looks exactly the same as somebody else's house. There's kind of
mm,
a house or home is somebody's personality, and it's
yeah.
and sometimes, as I say, sometimes people I think are a little bit scared to put that personality into it. But that's what I see my role as trying to help people figure out like how to put their personality into it and to make it unique to them and to,
Mm,
you know, celebrate what
mm,
they like and how they live and
mm,
what they enjoy. But yeah, it's a good question
mm,
about the kind of the material thing because I think it can and is to some extent,
mm,
has that side of it. But I suppose I'd quite like to try and
mm,
help people to see it from a slightly different point of view,
mm,
that it's more accessible perhaps to people.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting balance between the two. Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
wonderful. Where can people find you? And because I know you have a podcast, you've got Instagram, you've got a Substack you just told us, your website, of course. So where should people find you?
Yeah, so my website is www.hannahashe.co.uk. So that's Ash with an E. And my Instagram is Shay Hanny. So that's CHEZ_Hanny, HANNY. And actually my Substack handle is the same. Shay Hanny is my Substack too. So my podcast is hosted on Substack. So I have a podcast which is called Creative Career Change, and I interview women who have made a career change a bit later, perhaps in their life, and it's yeah, I love it, and I think I'm going to interview you at some point, aren't I? So that's going to be very exciting for our podcast swap. But yeah, so that's where I host my podcast. You can find the podcast on lots of other platforms as well. So it's called Creative Career Change, and then I write on Substack too. So yes, I think that's all the places that you can find me. But yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'll make sure I'll link all of that in the show notes or in the description. Depends a bit on if you looked at this on YouTube or another podcast platform. But yeah, I'll make
Yeah.
sure that people can find all of that.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being my guest. I feel like we could quite easily carry on for hours and hours because I think we have a lot of things in common, a lot of common interest in terms of creativity and design, and
Yeah.
the sort of things that we like to spend our times on. A lot of common values I found, which is really lovely because we don't really know each other very well.
Yeah.
Love of London. Yeah, so I'm sure we'll carry on the conversation outside of the podcast. But yeah, please everyone go check out Hannah's social media and Substack. I'm definitely going to have a look at your Substack as well. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely lovely.